quick correction to my old videos. This is unrelated. These two services, they actually don't have AP bendies. It's actually S shift. Although there are still possibilities whereby they replace another bus, and that happens to be an AP slot, and therefore on certain days they could technically run AP bendies, but usually that's not the case. So for 913, there would be one bus that does both East Loop and West Loop. I mean, one bendy, and then the other one, which is like 8026, if I'm not mistaken, it'll be confined to West Loop and run as 913T. It wouldn't appear on the East Loop. I mean, regardless of your opinion on this kind of arrangement, um, this is kind of like the current arrangement. Like, I'm just trying to describe the current arrangement to you and to correct myself from a previous video that there is no AP bendy except on 912. I mean, within Woodlands right now, and that if there are, it's probably replacing some other bus. And then in addition, sometimes weekends, okay, more so for this, weekends they may run. That's it. But the main point of this video today is how the newer generation of bus enthusiasts are completely hopeless, and I'll explain why. Just two examples. Yeah. Taking pictures of the track. Taking pictures. Oh my god, I didn't pause my video. So, the person that used to be in charge of rigging out all the Volvo B5LHs in Bedok North Depot, and now technically colludes with the other bus enthusiast staff in Bedok North Depot to rig out SMB 310R, which is this bus. What he does is basically he boards the bus, informs the driver that he will be taking a photo of the trapeze, and he exits. He's no longer staff. But even if he was staff, it would still be considered weird behavior. And I don't even understand what's his intention in taking photos of the trapeze when he rigged out the bus. He should know which duty or slot the bus is doing. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have that Service 52 bus captain from Ulu Pandan Depot. You know who he is? That failed his first probation, was given a second chance, and even during his second chance, he managed to accumulate 9 complaints within the span of just 1 month. If this were the old era, SBS would have just outright dismissed him. But no, they didn't. They lack manpower so much to the point whereby as long as somebody completes like the first 6 weeks of like training, they would just like pass them and then let them become BCs. This is how bad the shortage is right now, that even the most questionable people, even the most reckless drivers, the ones that are the most unprofessional about things, even these people get to become BCs. And even despite numerous complaints being sent in, he still gets to keep his job apparently, even though years ago he would have been fired if this were the old era. So not only does he brag about him hiding people under the seat when the bus is layover at the layover, like at its parking lot. By right, all the passengers should have disembarked, but he allows people to stay on board, hide behind the seat, and then when the bus starts trip again, they don't have to hide anymore. For the purpose of fare evasion. So he lets his friends fare evade. That's just one thing. And then the other thing is, like I told you before, he sets his EDS to off service even though he's not supposed to do so that only passengers can alight, nobody's allowed to board, and he would just speed through, he would just drive recklessly. And yes, not to mention, he drives recklessly. That is my third point. And not only does he drive buses recklessly, he drives cars recklessly as well. Regardless of whether it's his own vehicle or car sharing, it doesn't matter, but you are not supposed to be doing this in the first place. And the even more stupid thing is, he does it and he brags about it openly to other people. And yet he's still allowed to continue working as a bus captain and endanger the lives of his commuters. His passengers, I mean. Like in the previous clip, the poor bus captain was like so confused. He was like, what is this guy doing? It's like, you have a group of bus enthusiasts that cannot stop harassing the bus captains for asking questions that don't even matter. It's just, they're trying to get fan service from the bus captains and not actually asking legitimate questions. And whenever they ask legitimate questions, it's usually because they want to buy time for people on the opposite side of the road to snap the bus. Usually. That's still not as bad, but either they try to harass the bus captains or they become bus captains themselves and they start endangering people's lives because of the way they drive. So that is the reason why I often say, if anything that is like speeding up the destruction of the hobby in general in Singapore, like bus spotting, I'm just gonna put it out there, like just bus spotting in general, it's actually not the public, it's actually not the authorities, the PTOs or what. It is more often than not the bus community imploding on itself when questionable people like this are allowed to take control, gain power, and do stupid stuff that affects other people negatively. And speaking of that, these aren't even the most prime examples. I've talked about people who do stupid stuff in real life. What about the bloggers? The bloggers are also another reason why the public tends to shun public transport enthusiasts in general, even though technically it's only these people that are questionable in terms of behavior. Like, I talked about this before. I talked about this before. I talked about this individual before. I talked about this before. It's like on one end of the spectrum, they go all over the internet and shout, training to be commuters, don't take the bus, walk to the station, make many transfers, squeeze in the train. That's one demographic group. And then the other demographic group just thinks their rapid buses are like omnipotent. And when I mean omnipotent, if you guys get what omnipotent means, I'm just going to illustrate with this little example. So they are like the equivalent of their rapid buses are omnipotent and sinless. They cannot do anything wrong. They are perfect. I'm just using this as an example to illustrate how this particular group of bus enthusiasts, quote unquote bus enthusiasts, all they do is like every single day, they literally worship and pray to rapid buses that, oh, they will be the savior of Singapore's bus network and solve every single transport issue. That and your bus services crayon to eat other feeder services as well. They claim that such buses, regardless of whether they are forced conversions of existing bus services into rapid bus services, or whether they're new bus services, the matter of fact is that the distance between one point and another is already so long. Not that long, but it's like distance-wise, it's quite long. And therefore, for these sorts of like long bus services, if you want to make a reference to like, let's say this, or even this, or even this. Just examples, but if you want to make a reference to these, yeah, you can. The main point is that all of these bus services, they require resources. But all of a sudden, because they claim this bus service only has 10 stops and therefore they don't require a lot of resources to run, not to mention the fact that they think 10 bus stops in a single bus route, like even CDS bus services have more than 10 stops. Because that's the only way that they can even get catchment, like within the neighborhood areas. And then these people are like, okay, my bus service is only going to have 10 stops in one direction. And they think that these 10 stops are able to get enough catchment within said 10 stops alone, whilst ignoring the fact that the quote-unquote intermediate stops that are skipped in between that actually need the connectivity besides just the major stops themselves, when these like intermediate stops are skipped, you lose out on a lot of connectivity. What people really want is convenience at their doorstep, and like I've said many times, speed is only really prioritized during peak hours and no other time frame. And because this group then goes on to talk about transponder tax, or like pressure plates that allow buses to rig traffic lights in their favor and basically fuck every other single vehicle, right? I just want my buses to go faster. And magically, all the congestion from PIE, Adam Road, Larney Road is just gonna magically disappear because of that, right? Because they made expressway bus lanes and with signalized exits, so every other single vehicle gets screwed in favor of buses. Like people who drive for a living get screwed because they want their public buses to go faster. Not just that, the way they gaslight people into thinking their buses are omnipotent is as follows. They start with like the main pointers of like 1 to 10, they post it on Reddit and stuff like that. Then they take these 10 images and start inserting them into their blog posts, and they talk about like their main theories first about how they want to have rapid bus services or existing bus services being forcefully converted into rapid bus services, even though literally nobody fucking asked for that in the first place, in response to the fact that they dislike the existence of these bus services because it doesn't fit their agenda, even though these bus services kind of fit the rapid stopping pattern that they are looking for. It's just that because it doesn't satisfy them in terms of like distance, it doesn't connect them to enough areas, they start going all around the internet bitching about how they can do things better than the current team in LT or MOT, even though when you take a deep dive into their ideas, they're actually full of shit. Every single attempt, it's like they could bring in some stupid primary school formula that in theory may make sense, but in practice it gets, I don't know how to say, but it gets like rendered useless because of many other factors that are along the route in itself. Yeah, you know, right? People with a JC, junior college background, tend to be more theory based, right? I mean, I also came from JC, okay? And I'm not like that. I have taken buses all my life. I know which areas have which kind of demographic, roughly. And even by looking at a map, even by looking at a bus route, I can really tell like what it's supposed to do. Rather than coming up with all these stupid theories that explain nothing, trying to force fit ideas from another country onto Singapore's context. And oh, because it's like so scholarly, it's like there's so many tough words being used in the article. It sounds scholarly. It sounds like as if this group of youngsters are like now the future of Singapore's bus industry because, or they're so articulate in their words. They know how to take an example from another country and apply it to the Singapore context without really thinking. But the main thing is about how they are so goddamn desperate to prove why their own suggestions work, and the fact that they spend so much time, so many articles just to gaslight the masses, like every single time, bringing in a different example. They start with like the non-specific example, and then they move on to the specific example. And then after that, their dirty trick is that they are going to start talking about conversion of existing bus services into rapid bus services, and they're gonna send these fucking whack suggestions to LTA and MOT in hopes that they get accepted. And not only that, every single one of these extremist bloggers, like whether they are like pro train, anti bus, or pro rapid bus, or whatever, they are going to bank on avenues such as FOLTA, going into these like grassroots kind of like focus group discussions, and start establishing themselves as a like group, planting their seeds into LTA and MOT during these focus group discussions, making a name for themselves on the internet, be it for good reason or for bad reason. It's not just somebody just like yapping on the internet into open space. No, their dirty trick is basically such that they want to gain traction online so that their group gets recognized, regardless of whether people actually understand the magnitude, like basically like whether they understand their suggestions would eventually lead to the downfall and destruction of Singapore's bus network in general. The masses don't understand this until I have to come in to like explain everything from start to finish, their dirty plans from start to finish, because I know this group's history, I know exactly what they're trying to push, and even though they may or may not have toned down, their intentions are simply, they haven't changed, it's still the same. And the reason why it's like done strategically, one at a time, one issue at a time, one article at a time, even though these articles are not well written in the first place, the reason why they do that is because they know that I'm gonna push back. They know that my friends are gonna push back. They know that Singapore bus enthusiasts out there who actually have a good grasp of reality and the ground sentiments, they know that these people will push back as well. So they cannot afford to become too extremist. So when you cannot afford to become too extremist and you want to plant your seeds and get people to hop on board your idea, what you do is you slowly try to like explain everything in detail, make it seem like as if your group has like really thought much about it, even though most of the articles are just like explaining an example that people already know, just yapping about a case study, and then trying to force fit said case study onto the Singapore context. It's usually like that. Be it whether they try to bring in an example of like, oh, a BRT with two maps from like one map for rapid, one map for local buses, whether it's this or trying to explain a theory that isn't even relevant to whatever that we're trying to talk about. Main point is that every single thing is being curated and it's being planned properly. It's more of like, if you cannot brainwash people in one go, they would slowly but surely try to do the slow brainwashing method. It's like every single article, I'm going to try to make it as if it's like so well written that it convinces people. Slowly but surely, I'm just going to keep stacking, all to prove one point about why my rapid buses are omnipotent, and why local buses suck, and why MRT sucks. And try to brand it off as like, oh, this middle ground is needed because the MRT system is not advancing fast enough. It's not expanding fast enough, I'm sorry. Lately, you dive into all their articles. It's all about trying to prove a non-existent point about speeding up public transport. And whilst during peak hours there is an actual need for it, that's why they even came up with the feeder expresses in the first place, right? But they are unhappy with like the way public transport is being sped up right now. It's just not their agenda. I've said this many times. And because of this, every single article is trying to slowly plant their seeds and like just brainwash people to gradually accept these ideas by giving multiple case studies, by slowly developing something. It's like You know how you cannot rush like fermentation, or you cannot rush uh, developing a complex soup like the Vietnamese pho, for example, something along those lines. For me, it's like I tell you every single main point and I unpack all of them at one go so that people have the full picture right from the very beginning. But their slide tactic is the complete opposite of that. It's just layer by layer by layer, developing it slowly and eventually trying to brainwash the masses into subscribing into this fucked up ideology. One moment they push distance time speed, another moment they push BRT, another moment they're talking about 701 and 43F. Every single step layering is specifically designed to push people to accept this concept, regardless of whether their theory is even correct in the first place. Because a lot of the theories ignore a lot of real life constraints. It's like instead of saying these real life constraints, you then go on, skip steps, jump steps to go on to say, like, oh, we're not going to talk about these constraints because we have already thought about these constraints and how we're going to tackle these constraints, without realizing that they are two separate issues. Yes, they kind of go hand in hand so that the idea overall is able to function, but you cannot just like ignore the real life constraints, become overly ambitious, try to like solve everything just in one, because it gives the impression that like you think everything is like so easy. You can have your like transponder tags, you can have your pressure plates so easily. You could get every single Singaporean to like, oh, basically ditch your cars, right, and basically embrace the fact that now buses are the king of the roads. Fuck delivery drivers, fuck taxis, fuck everybody else, right? Even the emergency vehicles. Like nobody else is entitled to the road besides buses. Is what your point? It's what your point is. Online yappers usually talk like as if everything is so easy, and you can see it from their overambition, zealousness, and greed, like all in one package. That's what I'm trying to say. Even though I explain it in a really haphazard manner, every single step is curated to push this agenda. Full stop. And once they're done pushing this agenda, later talking about conversion of existing trunk services to become sonic bus services, they are gonna go on to talk about, oh, now the stops are skipped, right? Oh, we're gonna make the trunk bus services eat the feeder bus services, or the feeders eating up another feeder services. They're gonna then talk about this so that it kind of satisfies like their natural progression, like how trunks become this shit, how some trunks we choose to spare them from this rationalization, and how said trunks would then go on to eat up feeder services, or the feeders eating up the feeder services to form their new windy trunks, per se. So it's kind of like a standardization of like, you are not allowed to have straight long trunks. Everything must be a sonic bus. And if a trunk has to be local all stop, it has to start winding endlessly within the neighborhood to get maximum catchment so that you hub spoke between this and this. This is all part of their dirty plan. They don't even think about what the purpose of like bus services are nowadays. They just want to curate everything in a very, I don't know, in a very structured manner in order to push their ideologies. And not just that, like even in the previous video, um, I was like kind of losing it basically. But what I was trying to say is that they try to somehow prove a point that, oh, because there were semi-express bus services that in the middle, right, they skipped a whole chunk of bus services. Sorry, they skipped a whole chunk of bus stops in the middle, like let's say Sims Avenue, Geylang Road, or like Marymount Road, because of, and this was done before the MRT. But the truth is that MRT kind of like rendered these bus services useless. But then they're gonna say, oh, as a middle ground, right, we want to bring this back. And then even those that are not like rationalized by MRT, they eventually became like all-stop bus services because the passengers specifically requested for them to call all stops. Like basically, not really, but like it's more of like these semi-express bus services eventually lost their popularity in favor of all-stop bus services that call people's doorsteps. But keep in mind, it's like trying to twist history and the reasonings behind why such a thing was present in the past just to push their own ideologies. I think that's fucked up. And it gives people such a wrong impression of how Singapore's buses were like back then and why there are legitimate reasons for buses to be like that back then. Simply because distance fares weren't a thing then. Yeah. And then there was no MRT, so they have no choice but to use buses. Now that there's MRT doing these fast connections, they no longer needed the bus services to go express along Sims Avenue or Geylang Road. I am okay with people taking historical concepts and trying to revive them, but I really cannot stand it when people try to twist history and the reasonings behind why certain decisions are made in order to fit their own agenda. Something that the Singapore government is good at doing as well, by the way. It's basically trying to like nostalgia bait people, but in the worst way possible. Trying to evoke nostalgia, trying to like trying to pull heartstrings from people. I don't know what that phrase is, but it's like trying to like really get people to have an emotional connection to their past routes, thinking like, oh, these people are true bus fans, right? They even read up into Singapore's bus history. Oh, I'm gonna give them my full support because they are true bus enthusiasts. It's like kind of thing. This is how exactly brainwashing works. It's when people go about typing on their blog, even though it doesn't make sense, but because it's carefully curated to, you know, get certain feelings out of people as opposed to actually making sense. Yeah, this is exactly how brainwashing works. Why am I so hard on people, you might ask? Well, it's because even though I don't have to give a shit about this country because I'm not going to be in this country for long anyway, and I technically have no obligation to give a shit as well. But my friends live here, and human beings, they need to commute. They live here as well. And I feel so sorry for them if they have to be under the mercy of these rogue groups of bus enthusiasts. Not just the ones who cause trouble in real life, but the people who try to brainwash the masses online. This is why I say, once I am no longer in Singapore, I can still do the yapping videos, but I have to keep my volume down because I will live in a share house. It's not my own house, so I cannot just keep yapping at this kind of volume anymore, especially at night. So eventually you guys have to take charge. What I mean is that if you are a bus enthusiast, like you are knowledgeable enough in this area and you know what kind of dirty tricks these people are up to, you need to stand up for the commuters. You need to stand up for yourself and for other people, regardless of whether like you are going to be impacted or not. Because this is not something that's like, oh, I don't like this product, I'm not going to buy it, I'm not going to use it. No, this is something that involves people's livelihoods, that involves people trying to get from point A to point B. And it's no laughing matter because it's like, it's their livelihood. They rely on these essential services to get to where they need to get to. And therefore, you shouldn't mess around with this kind of things just to push your own agenda. So, to keep it short, you guys, every single time they try to put out nonsense, you have to call them out. And I mean it. Hold them responsible for the bullshit that they have been spewing online. And try to unpack it for like people who aren't necessarily bus enthusiasts. Try to break down whatever they have been trying to say. Just basically tell people what their agenda is without confusing non-bus enthusiasts with like all these fanciful terms. Say things like, This group of road bus enthusiasts, they want existing buses that you have been relying for years and years and years. They want these bus services to now skip your house, like your home's doorstep bus stop. You need to be able to convey this properly. This group doesn't change. They are still very stubborn and insistent on what they want to push, and they would do all it takes to make a name for themselves, hire the no, not hire, but like basically try to get as much media attention as possible for those people, because that's how they spread. I mean, that's how their ideology spread. They make use of their media, of Singapore's like local media, to carry out their dirty work, basically, because they just want the reach. So this is why I say the people that are destroying the Singapore bus community is the Singapore bus community itself. When these people go unchecked, go on a power trip, try to brainwash the masses, try to get everybody on their side so that they can have their agenda, not that they actually give a shit about people. Because from prior interactions with those people, they don't give a shit about the commuters or how they would be affected. They just want their ideas to materialize no matter what it takes. It is not easy for these groups to just disband overnight. If anything, the leader of that group has this thing called cockroach tenacity. It's tenacity, but in the worst way possible. He wouldn't shut the fuck up until he gets what he wants, at the expense of other people. Because I was like, okay, maybe they're gonna change, maybe their ideas are not gonna be as extreme anymore, but no. It's still inside there. It's still the trunk eat feeder bullshit, the feeder eat feeder shit, and the normal trunk service convert to rapid bus service bullshit. It is still there, despite numerous attempts to try to unpack everything and explain everything to people. It's still there. All the talks about bus captain welfare, but they would be, I don't think they realize this, but they would be forcing bus captains to learn this kind of windy ass shit route just to push their ideologies. And then the poor bus captains are gonna have to remember like which bus stops they have to call and which bus stops they have to skip because of this. It's not just like, oh, it's easy to remember. It's like call, skip, call. It's not like this. It's like you have to remember which exact stop you have to call. Talking about BC welfare, but you don't even give a fuck as to how the BCs are even able to remember this kind of thing. When your bus routes get overcomplicated for no reason, and everything is just like under the disguise of Singaporeans want to speed up public transport. Not in the way you described, man. Usual taking shit out of context just to push their own agendas. Putting up survey posters at bus stops, telling them that, oh, your suggestions would be implemented in the year 2050, and then saying that like, oh, MRT is not gonna expand fast enough, right? So right now we're asking your opinions about 2050, but we want to introduce our rapid bus services ASAP until the year 2050, when you run all the MRT lines and then our rapid bus services are just going to get withdrawn one by one. I mean, it's like the normal thought process, the normal people, they would think about like this. Since the rapid bus services are literally just clones of MRT, no matter how much the group tries to spin it as, oh, a middle ground between bus and MRT, no, there's no such thing. Like all the CDS, all the Express, all the 457, 458, they are just like regular bus services. They do the job of what a bus is supposed to do, regardless of whether they're short, medium, long distance. So you're telling me that like your rapid bus services are either going to survive beyond this time period or would be rationalized by MRT, and you're trying to paint it as if like, oh, I'm trying to fuck up every single bus service in Singapore before the MRT expands. Like, what the... okay, like I've explained, the normal thought process is that your rapid bus services are literally just clones of MRT. The corridors, they look like MRT. It's just that you're using a bus to do an MRT-like corridor. And I don't deny that in some cases it might work, but with the way they just went about like 971, it's not gonna work because you skip so much connectivity in between, you cannot even get enough catchment for your bus service to even break even. And then your other MRT alternative is what? DTL, CRL. And not every single place has like DTL and CRL. And for the intermediate, non-major bus stops that do not have access, but yet they don't even have access to this skip stop bus service in the first place, who the fuck are you benefiting? You want to give people an alternative to trains, which is what people usually do, right? But your bus service doesn't even call the bus stops that the people actually want these bus services to call. And ultimately, I don't even get like this short-term rapid bus, long-term, many train lines kind of thing. So your intent is like you're trying to push your agenda, but your intent isn't even clear. Are your fucking rapid services going to survive beyond 2050? And then think about this. How many people realistically are asking to get from like outside Chua Chu Kang, Bukit Panjang, all the way to like Brattle Road in general, just gonna say in between Brattle and Bishan, and then in Serangoon, Kovan, and Hougang. Realistically, how many people are asking to commute like that? There is one thing about adding new connectivity to Tengah, and that's good. But again, realistically, how many people from Tengah even want to go to Brattle Road or Serangoon, Kovan, Hougang in the first place? Where exactly do they want to go? And even if it's a good thing, you just want to add connectivity, like let's say you replace 971 with not a rapid but an express, like instead of making this rapid, you make it express instead, and okay, at least Tengah gets like some kind of like connectivity, right? That would be fair enough at the very least, because there is enough catchment from the Tengah side and from the northeast or the Brattle Road side. At least even if it's like not where Tengah people truly want to get to, you could still justify its sustainability in some sense, that people don't necessarily have to take the bus from Tengah all the way to these areas, but they can see when you only have 10 stops, right? It's like you're trying to dictate the purpose of this bus service rather than you create a new like trunk or normal express bus service, and you basically just observe and you see how the commuter patterns change over time. It's not like expecting people to take the bus service from Tengah all the way to Hougang, Kovan, Serangoon. Sorry, Serangoon, Kovan, Hougang. You're not expecting people to like take end to end. You're just like, I'm making this bus service. If there are any useful connections along the route, yeah, it's an added bonus kind of thing. Because I don't like how they try to dictate that, oh, there is this exclusive catchment from people coming from Tengah, Chua Chu Kang, Bukit Panjang that want to go to Serangoon, Kovan, Hougang. And it's not just like, oh, Serangoon, Kovan, Hougang in general. No, it's just specifically MRT stations. I'm telling you, nobody's gonna use a bus route if it doesn't call your doorstep bus stop. And what I mean by that, it's like, it's not saying that, oh, this bus service doesn't pass by outside my house and therefore I'm not able to. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that you see the bus, but you cannot flag for the bus. You would feel really insulted, right? And even if you go about trying to brand this as like, oh, somewhere in between like a bus and a train, and you try to give all the fucking stupid reasonings that like people don't like trunk services, I'm gonna flat out lie that trunk services and feeder services are empty. That's what they actually did. And try to prove that even despite having 10 stops, how our Sonic the Hedgehog bus services would magically have like exponential demand growth because they do the because they do the role of MRT despite being a bus. I cannot fucking stand it when people just lie in broad daylight or very blatantly just to push their own agendas without even specifying which exact feeder or trunk bus services are empty in the first place. And from which sector to sector, what point in time, like which part of the day is it? Is it day, morning, night, peak hour, or what? And the thing is, even if they want to try to push this whole like, oh, Sonic the Hedgehog bus services, right? And most realistically, you could only push it during peak hours where people actually want to commute. Any other time, if your bus doesn't serve the intermediate bus stops and only focuses on the major bus stops, you're not going to be able to sustain this kind of bus service outside of peak hours. And that's the reason why 457 and 458, they only operate during peak hours. Because off peak, you're not going to get any catchment. If it's so like skip stop-ish. You see 502 and 518, they succeed because it's local off stop. Within the neighborhood sectors, people have a doorstep connectivity from like the shopping areas, like to and from the shopping areas. Like it's just so stupid when their argument for a middle ground in between bus and MRT, just that they are using buses or BRT like bus routes. It's like their argument from the middle ground, it stems from like their own delusions that trunk bus or feeder bus services are empty without even specifying which sectors at what point in time of the day are empty. Nobody's gonna fucking take you seriously if you don't even include the concrete examples. You're just gonna like yap, and try to push a point and hope everybody accepts it. That's not how it works. You see, when you actually try to like deep dive and break your arguments apart, like in the articles, you try to break your arguments apart, it just falls apart. I mean, like, as in, like, when you try to dissect everything, you would realize that all your arguments fall apart because either they didn't explain something properly or they're just flat out lying. And that's why I say, like, in the previous video, right, I almost, like, I think for, like, a few seconds, I think I became, like, a K-pop vocalist, a K-pop main vocalist. It's like I got so much brain damage from like reading that article to the point whereby I'm just like, can this get any worse? Like, why is it that like day by day, the Singapore bus community, and it's not like the normal people in general, I'm talking about these buffoons, these like cuckoos in the head, it's never ending. It's like more and more crazy people are starting to emerge from this community in general, and I don't understand why. It's because they want attention, they want validation, or what? I fucking don't get it. Cause like you're wasting people's time reading these dumb shit articles. You're also wasting the authorities' time by attending these like grassroots focus group discussion sessions whilst not saying anything constructive. You're taking up space for people who you're taking up space and not giving it to people who actually, not me, but giving it to actual Singapore bus enthusiasts who are actually knowledgeable and deserve to be there. But you go there just for the sake of like pushing your ideology and making yourselves more famous, which is like basically what bus influencers are. They are just like TikTok influencers, except they use Medium, they use Discord, they use Reddit, they use whatever the fuck there is out there, Telegram, I don't know, to try to influence the masses basically. That's what they do. I'm really sick of these people.